In honor of Takahiro Tomiyasu and the PGMOL, we are now going to waste 90 minutes of your time. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. I hope we're not going to do that. I hope we're going to have an excellent conversation about what was an interesting football match, made more interesting by David Coote being too cute on the pitch with his yellow cards, he says, trying to do a pun before he's had his coffee. Look, the fact of the matter is Arsenal have 6 points, and there are a lot of other clubs that wish they would have 6 points. Maybe it wasn't the way we wanted to get it in the end. I could have done without the anxiety. I think I said on the instant reaction that while I am not a drugs person, and certainly no judgment on those who are drugs people, they may be listening or in fact participating in this podcast. I know what it feels like to be on most of them because that's what the last 20 minutes or so felt like of the game. And then when the final whistle went, the relief of anxiety is arguably a better feeling than never having felt anxiety at all. So I will take it. If you want your dose of Clive, you will have to look for the instant reaction because Clive is not available today, but we will be doing a rewatch tomorrow along with probably our Premier League Power Rankings episode. So lots of good stuff going on over there, but lots of good stuff going on over here. And, we'll probably spend a lot of this podcast talking about how Nicolas Pepe will be integrated into the team this season. And, whether he'll start over Bukayo Saka or just be a rotational option, that's certainly something everybody wants to know. We'll talk a little bit about Gabriel Magalhaes and what's going on there. And of course, how we played. I did the Paul. I am your Paul today. I rewatched the game, which means that all of my opinions will, of course, be more accurate and truthful than the opinions of these other two fools who clearly have not done that. In fact, I am delighted to announce a man who may not have even seen the game the first time for reasons we will explain. And his name is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillmanair. Hello, Tim.
Hello there. Good intro there. And to clear up for the listeners, I was behind a very large pole, which entirely obstructed the goal that Arsenal scored in. And as well as that, I had, I think, 5 pints before kickoff. So I'm here for vibes today.
I really enjoyed your clips of audio from the ground for the instant reaction because I could track your consumption as they went. There was definitely some changes in vocal tone and pacing. Here with me now, as well as Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause.
Woohoo! I did an Elliot. I didn't watch it, so my opinions will be even dodgier than usual.
Yep.
And for those who didn't get the Tim cast yesterday, I can tell you the two important things. He'd had quite a bit to drink, and he was very, very angry with the referee.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's alone in the first. I'm sure there were some people along with him for the ride, but he is definitely not alone in the second aspect of that description, Paul. I think a lot of people were very angry with the referee, and it's tough, right? Because I get a lot of messages from people that are like, enough referee talk sucks. And I feel like the way we could avoid it is to just have the referees not force it upon us. But here's what I will do, because I think referee talk is boring in general. Like, we're going to complain that the ref made bad calls and that the rules maybe aren't being enforced properly. I don't want to do it at the top. I just don't. I think there's so much more interesting Arsenal stuff to talk about after we won away at Palace than to talk about the refs. So let's put that where it belongs in the caboose. We'll come to it, no doubt. But let's start with a more interesting point, Tim. And, we are left to speculate. Now, Mikel Arteta, his exact quote on Gabriel not starting and whether it's due to speculation. Nothing at all. It's about games that we were expecting, how we were going to defend and attack, and what I believe is the best thing. He's played in both games and helped us win both games for different reasons. He was really good today. He absolutely dominated the box when he came on, and he's going to play a lot of games. That's the decision sometimes. If there had been no links to him leaving, I would look and I would say, you know what? It's weird that he hasn't started. Mikel basically picked him every single time he's been available since he's arrived at the club. So it's weird. He didn't do this at all in preseason, which makes it even weirder. But in the absence of the speculation, I would say, but look, we dominated possession in both games. We really did push teams back. We really did operate in the areas of the pitch we want to operate. And what it does seem to do, undeniably, is allow Mikel to get Rice, Partey, Havertz, Odegaard on in the positions that he wants to get them on in. So there is a sort of tactical explanation. The problem is the speculation does exist. We know that he has met with the Saudi Arabian team representatives. Fabrizio Romano has tweeted now twice that Arsenal have no intention of letting him go. And based on his, I would say, demeanor on the pitch yesterday, there's certainly no indication that this is a stroppy player who's not, fighting for Arsenal. So can you take all that jumbled nonsense I've just spewed out and let me know what you think of the decision not to start Gabriel and whether this quote unquote tactical approach is the truth and is what we will see more of?
Yeah, let's take it from both sides. So first of all, I'd say I'm on the kind of Occam's razor side here, which is that it doesn't feel entirely right. I say doesn't feel right. It feels like there's something there, and Arteta. It's not just about Gabriel. He's talked a little bit as well about like the transfer market, and he said some cryptic things like unless people don't go out or unless things happen that we don't want to happen.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel.
yeah, and that felt because it initially I wondered whether that was about Partey because there have been kind of on-off rumours about that, but yeah, it does just seem weird to me. But at the same time, I guess let's look at it from the other perspective and that it is tactical and actually it is justifiable, it is explicable in terms of, look, we've always had like Zinchenko inverting from left back. However, this feels like that plus. Like it feels to me like maybe it's just because I'm not as used to it, but Partey, that's a real like, I barely even stand at right back. Only when we're like defending our box am I in that position kind of at all. And it feels much, much more like an actual back three rather than like a three that slides into a four, which to be fair does happen. But do you know what I mean? It feels a little bit extra for want of a better phrase. And I guess in that scenario, you look at our centre-backs, you can't take Saliba out because like I love Gabriel. I think he's great. But Saliba's, this is no shame to Gabriel to say that Saliba's better. He just is. Saliba might be the best centre-half in the Premier League. He is in that conversation for sure. Yep. And I'd have to think about it and think about the other centre-backs. But without thinking about it too much, I can't think of anyone better. Yep. So he has to play, and he has to play in the middle. Ben White has got that hybrid kind of right back, right centre back thing down to a T because he's played both positions a lot. And then Tomiyasu, like at left back. So unless you start Gabriel as a left back, then maybe tactically it's completely explicable. It's completely justifiable. And we've talked about how, I think last week we talked about how actually Tomiyasu as a kind of wide centre half really makes sense. And, we have seen Gabriel do this because clearly he spent most of last season kind of covering that space for Zinchenko. But it does feel a little bit like more like Ben White, like RCB, as it were, in a three. Perfect. Saliba, centre. Perfect. And then it's a bit like, well, do you actually play Gabriel then as an actual out-and-out left back? And it does feel like that role is probably more natural for both Timber and Tomiyasu. Yeah. So that's kind of my thinking. And I wonder also if there's something in Gabriel and Zinchenko coming as a bit of a pair. Maybe, because I fully expected Zinchenko to start this game, I have to say. And I think at the moment it is just a case of Arteta likes Partey there. He likes having Partey in the team. And he's just going to keep doing that until either he has to change or maybe Thomas Partey's calf goes again, which, I feel like we've seen several times before.
Yeah, I think... Again, the thing that makes it hard is the speculation, because the fact is there's speculation. He's met with the Saudi Arabian representatives, as I've said, with the club representatives, if you want me to be a little more specific. And as a result, it could be related to that. I do struggle to see why you would think a player can't start because there's speculation that he's leaving. But then you feel totally confident to bring him on in the most pressurized time when defending is most at a premium. And he has played in both games. Now, I rewatched this game, so I want to emphasize that my points here are going to be extremely, extremely accurate. That's how this works. We start the game in that 3-2-2-3 formation. And it's a wide three at the back. So it's White in the right half space, right flanky area. It's Tomiyasu in the left half space, left flanky area, and Saliba operating alone. If that is the formation Mikel wants to use, you tell me where Gabriel fits. You're not going to start Gabriel over Saliba, not because Gabriel isn't great, just because, first of all, the role he's giving Saliba is essentially, let's call it the Pirlo role. I mean, it really is. That's kind of what he's doing there. He's almost at the base of a diamond. That's what he did against Forest, in fact, a little bit less in this game. You're not going to start him where Tomiyasu played. Now, I'm not the biggest Tomiyasu guy right at the moment. I don't think he looked brilliant in this game, but I don't think Gabriel's going to be as natural operating in the zones that Tomiyasu was. I mean, at times he was overlapping. He was getting really out wide. So if he does want to do this 3-2-2-3 thing, I mean, it is going to be difficult for him to pick Gabriel to start games where he wants to do that. Now, there's going to be tons of games where he's going to want to go White, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko. Tons. And maybe Zinchenko coming back to full fitness is really the reason he's picked this as an alternative. I do think it's weird he didn't try it in preseason. And that's also probably contributing to why we're like, well, why is it happening now? But I don't think you can argue that it isn't working, at least in the attacking sense. Look, the one thing that I want to be clear about is until we went down to 10 men, Palace were barely in this game. This was a better performance than the one we had opening night last season in terms of our dominance in this game. I absolutely believe that. So, Paul, maybe not specifically or strictly about the decision to bench Gabriel, but the decision to go with this system. Because one of the debates you and I sort of had, or you flicked me the V's on mute during the instant reaction yesterday, was my suspicion that I think we will see this system more, even if Gabriel stays, and that this isn't just a transfer rumor related innovation. So what's your sense on how it makes us play and whether you think it's working? Because I know a lot of people are like, party at right back doesn't work, but at least in the build-up phase and attacking, it seems to do what it's designed to do.
Yeah. So we have two dogs, and one of the dogs thinks all instructions to all dogs in the household are for him, no matter what's going on. It's very confusing for everybody. And that's what happened yesterday on our instant reaction. Clive and I were flicking each other the V's. We're basically saying, because we were queuing up, we wanted to bite at whatever ridiculous take you just have, and we were getting excited about how we were coming in next. And so you thought we were insulting you. We were actually...
Which, by the way, led me down the road of some hot takes, because I was getting wound up and then started putting extra stink on my takes to try to fire you guys up. It was not a good feedback loop going on there. But anyway,
yes,
please.
one of them you lashed on mustard, sriracha, and a few other things with your take. That was a good one. It involved Gabriel and, ironically, and this formation, and that we would never play the Gabriel formation ever again in our existence.
Something like that. But assuming that that's not the case, but we do use this again. I mean, do you think that fundamentally it works?
Yes-ish. Like, here's what I think. We're getting better at it. There's a lot going on here. I mean, there's debates about what we really did yesterday. Was Thomas Partey really just a right back in this game who occasionally drifted central? Well, I've begun my rewatch. I'm 2 minutes into it, 2 and a bit minutes into it, and Thomas Partey has played centre back. He's played right back. He's now firmly and clearly in the centre of midfield with Rice pushed over to the left. This is 2 minutes in, which shows you a lot of intent of how we wanted to play. And I think it was very much the more Crystal Palace allowed us to play like Nottingham Forest did, the more we saw the Thomas Partey, the Rice thing. Now, I think they expected that they would have a lot more resistance in midfield, a lot more to cope with, a lot more defending to do, our Arsenal back line. So they weren't too shocked that he didn't get to spend a lot of time in midfield. So Mikel has said it's all about unpredictability, different looks, different ways of being able to play. And we're going to have Zinchenko who can step in from the left-hand side, assuming we keep everybody we've got on the pitch and in the squad. We're going to have Thomas Partey as an option to step in from the right-hand side, and he does it with gusto. Big disagreements with me on the Discord yesterday because I thought Thomas Partey was a critical component of how we played. And I really liked what he did. In fact, the fact that he had to do so much full backing in this game, and I thought he was
second half. Yeah, he was defending like a fullback. We haven't seen that before.
Yeah, and I thought he was really good, and he handled his assignment well. I mean, I'm not saying brilliant for a right fullback, but like I thought he handled his assignment really well, covered his side, wasn't in trouble, was very clever, gave us options when we played out, spun, passed. I thought he was really good. And this gives, like, when Party moves into the center, Rice can push up, Havertz can join the front line. There's a chain reaction of things that it allows us to do become much more attacking, so that we're basically converting one of our center backs. We're exchanging that for a midfielder and an attacker, because that allows Party to be on the pitch, because we've given up Gabriel. Party to push in midfield, Rice to push forward as the left 8, and Havertz to become an attacker when the game allows it, and when it doesn't, everybody moves back one along that chain. They both kind of talked about that. I think it's fantastic. Does it mean the execution yesterday was perfect and great and we absolutely bamboozled them? No, but I thought we got stronger and stronger as the game came along, as the game went on, and the penalty was not just an incident. You could see pressure at the end of the first half, pressure at the start of the second half. I thought we were building. We really had them where we wanted them. I think there's a brilliant option for early in the season. Maybe it's all because of some shenanigans in the background around Gabriel, but it certainly plays out that if we suddenly learn that there was nothing going on with Gabriel, and Mikel wanted to play this for the first 2-3 games to get it nailed down against opposition that we could do this with, it gives him a whole set of tools for the rest of the season. I love it. It wasn't perfect. We didn't fully execute it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to deal with when you're the other team and you don't know who you're playing against and how on Sunday. Is it coming from the left-hand side with Zinchenko? Is it coming from the right with Party? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Look, the first thing you need to do when you're playing under the lights, Monday Night Football, in front of the whole world, away at a Palace team that really gets up for these home games, right, with a loud crowd, is you need to come out and take the crowd out of the game and take the fight out of the team. In the first 12 minutes, we had 82% possession away at Palace. And I think what that did is it quieted down that crowd. Because I'll tell you what I was hearing. I was hearing the Saliba chant. I was hearing the "We won the league at Anfield" chant. I was hearing "We've got Super Mick Arteta." I wasn't hearing much from anybody else. And, coming out of the way that game was kicking off, I was like, this is going to be a cauldron. And we just sapped all the life out of it the way Manchester City do when they go away, right? Just, we can't even get the ball. Last season, we won 2-0. We got a late goal. And it was Arsenal are great. We're going to be title contenders. We had more shots in this game, double the expected goals in this game, conceded fewer shots, conceded fewer expected goals. And despite being down to 10 men for almost half an hour, we had more possession this game than we did last season. 44% last season in this fixture, 53% in this game. And again, that's with 25 minutes or so where we couldn't even get a foot on the ball for a while. So I really think the red card and the way the game ended and the nervousness around that to a great extent impacted the way people felt about this. And to Mikel's credit, by the way, he was asked after the match if we've achieved the level he wants this season. And he says no, because we have to put the ball in the net more often, especially with the dominance we are having in games. I love that answer because everybody will agree dominating games is great, but it means nothing if you don't score. And he says, but that's the most difficult thing in football. So if you don't do that, you have to do the other part, which is be extremely solid. We were last week. We were again today with the chances we conceded. Let's keep playing better and evolving. And Tim, I do think the system works. I think it achieved the outcome we wanted. I mean, second minute, Kai Havertz gets onto a loose ball quickly, really intelligently picks out Martinelli. He's in the left half space inside the box in the channel, I guess you would call it. He's just wide open. All he has to do is lash it with his left foot, and we've seen him do that. Did it against West Ham last season. Can't do it here. No goal. Eddie Nketiah, he breaks in on net. He holds up really nicely, uses his weaker foot beautifully, off the post, little unlucky. Next time, can't control it quite as well from the Rice pass. Chips it. Chip probably, not quite the option there. I think Paul was saying it was a terrible option. I wouldn't go that far. I'd say it just wasn't quite the right option as I stitch him up. I mean, we had those moments. Rewatching this, one of the things that stuck out to me, this is a team that still hasn't hit its effervescent best in the final third. Bukayo Saka had and I know you're not even allowed to say this without people getting outraged, but I'm just going to say it, a below par Bukayo Saka game. A number of situations where Saka picks out a man usually, or finds a better ball, or picks out a better cross. It wasn't happening from Odegaard very similarly. Just not, and we'll come on to Odegaard's key contribution, but just not finding it. I mean, sometimes I think when things don't click in the final third, performances don't get the credit they deserve. But in your mind, do you think that's really just the next thing that has to go bang, to quote Mikel Arteta, which is these automatisms in the final third really clicking into place? Because this game could have been a laugher. It could have been over before the red card, but I just think we were lacking and still lack a bit of that sharpness in the final third.
Yeah, definitely. And you could see that against Forest as well. And we're missing our usual centre forward. We got Kai Havertz in the mix, who's a new player, and we're asking people to do new things. That the thing, had I been on the instant reaction in the sense of, with you guys, my headline would have been that we won this game twice. In the respect that, like, how did you feel when we went 1-0 up? Because I felt finally, like, I felt like we were going to score. I didn't, don't get me wrong, this never felt like a 3 or 4-0 game or anything like that, but I really felt confident we'd score. I know I felt like that at half time. I just felt like, keep doing this, we'll get the goal. Like, we're not going to thrash them, and that's fine. Like, that shouldn't really be an expectation here. Do you know how Man City won this fixture the last time they played it? Do you remember it at the end of last season?
Was it a late penalty?
1-0 with a penalty, yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of had a similar feeling, like when you were watching that game. It's like, City are going to get there. They got there a bit later than us in that game, but you were watching it thinking, they're going to get there. They're going to make that big chance. And then we found another way to win the game at 10 men. And I know some people, and I get this, I know some people felt we were a bit too submissive with 10 men, but I thought we do. I just didn't feel that uncomfortable. Actually, I was looking at it and I was like,
I'll have what he's having. Several beers.
I was going to say, yeah, maybe because of that. But I was just looking at it and I was like, if Palace score, it's going to be a bit of a freak. It's going to be a bit out of the blue. It might be, and of course that can happen. Like set piece, long shot, something like that. That can happen. So obviously you're nervous about that. But I was looking at it and thinking, they don't, like, if I were a Palace fan, I'd be looking at my watch and thinking about, perhaps making my way to the exit. So we found two different ways to win the game. And one of the things I'm pleased about with this is, I think Arteta used the phrase after the Fulham game. After the Forest game, we gave them hope. Which we did briefly at 2-0. We kind of just let them back into it. But at 2-1, I think we shut it down very effectively. And we talked a lot over the summer, haven't we, on the podcast about having that shut down team, having those players that can come on. Usually I'd list Tomiyasu among them, by the way, but just bringing, like, you need a bit of possession and you've got Jorginho and Zinchenko and Trossard sitting on your bench ready to come on. And it's just like, there you go. Need a bit of possession. These are the best guys in the game at doing that and drawing the sting out of the game. And that's what pleased me most. I agree, we definitely haven't clicked in an attacking sense. I kind of didn't expect us to yet. It feels to me this season like nearly everyone has a hybrid role. Like Declan Rice is a 6 and an 8 and passes a right back and a central midfielder, and Havertz is an 8 and a second striker. And, there's much more of a carousel going on, and that's going to take time. But what was the thing we had to improve on last season? It was stopping those spaces defensively. That had to be the priority. We know we have the players to make the difference. We can be 80% on our attacking game and still win these games because we've got really good players. Defensively, we need to be totally on our game, and I think we have been.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's going to take time for us to be our best, because that's kind of how seasons work, I think. I mean, you'd like to be good right from the start, and I think we have been good right from the start. But, in terms of really clicking in the final third in attack, we're still figuring that out. Xhaka's a new piece, and Ketia, well, I think he's actually done quite well. is not the first choice piece of the puzzle there. The system is a little different and the automatisms are a little different. Bukayo Saka, that was his 82nd straight start. He tied Paul Merson. If he starts against Fulham, it'll be 83. It'll be a club record. But it's a lot of football, and just to stay locked in and be your absolute best for 83 consecutive games, like that's not super easy. There's going to be peaks and valleys. I think this was one of those games where, unfortunately, basically every player you expect to be an option to find us a goal had an equally kind of off day in the box or in the final third, right? I mean, Eddie, who, if you want to say anything about him, is kind of a finisher, wasn't a finisher in this game. Martinelli, same thing. Bukayo Saka, same thing, right? Martin Odegaard. I mean, I think we saw that volley he took. That I've never seen Odegaard strike a ball that way. There was one where he exchanged passes with Martinelli. Martinelli found him cutely at the top of the box, and the defense just parts like the Red Sea, and he's just staring at the net, and for whatever reason, he just turns and gives it straight back, I think, to Havertz or something. So just a lot of weird final third stuff. All right, look, we're 26 minutes in, and we buried the lead, and I'm not talking about the referees here. Paul, this was the moment. Declan Rice was given a bit of a different role, and I think it's fair to say he had his breakout game. Sometimes a player gets criticized unfairly for a performance for one reason or another, and you rewatch it and you're like, it wasn't that bad. And sometimes a player just gets lavished with praise, and you rewatch it and you're like, we were kind of looking for a reason to praise him. This ain't that. He was lavished with praise, and I rewatched it, and I'm like, he's better than I thought. He was fantastic. He should have had that assist to Eddie Nketiah. He dropped deep and played 6 and cleaned up beautifully. And it was the whole game. When we were dominant in possession, what he started to finally do is show some personality. Carry the ball past that first man, not just take it and give it. I think he was playing within himself when he first arrived. Don't make mistakes, recycle the ball, move the ball. This game, I felt like we saw the full Declan Rice. Stride forward, drive past him. And then when we're down to 10 men, he played with a smile on his face the whole time, like someone who's like, oh, hey, I played suffer ball for the last 3 years of my career. I love this shit. I'll sit deep and defend if you want me to. An absolute man of the match type performance from Rice, and the kind of performance that I think will only help him get better and better, because I think when you're a big money signing, that first game where you really break out and get praise, and he got the man of the match award, I think that helps you say, okay, you know what? I've arrived. The expectations are off you a little bit, and you can play with a little more freedom. This to me is a really good sign. Am I over-egging it, or was he that good?
I think he was that good. He was given the job to be the central hub here. He bossed it. Everything else, he was the planet in the center of the solar system, the sun. Everything else rotated around him. Like the Thomas Partey position's particularly interesting relative to Rice's, because basically this is the first game in which I would say Rice was the reference, and Thomas Partey found his positions, either joining him in midfield, hovering on the right wing, dropping into centre back, depending on where he found Declan Rice in the centre of the park. And Declan was basically always in the centre of the park, or Deco, as we Irish folk will call our boy.
Not Deckers?
No, that's a ridiculous name. It's
my
obviously
bad.
his nickname in school would have been Deco. He's like, in a way, there are these kinds of performances where a guy bosses it, but I don't kind of feel like going into all the different little things he did. It kind of misses the point of the stuff, the performance. He was just central. He was obviously absolutely loving it. He was there to drop in, pick up the ball, spin around, make a choice, keep it simple a lot of the time. It was a lot of tempo, keep it ticking over, physicality, ability to cover ground, a bit of everything, which over a few minutes of the game, 10, 15 minutes, starts to impact the momentum, the possession, the rhythm. And it's like one of those things where it's maybe not the most incredible highlights reel you'll ever see, but when a guy's pulling the strings, dominating the center of the pitch. We've had so many games over the last decade and a half, where there's this midfield battle and the ball's popping around. And like in a performance like this, there isn't much of a midfield battle, even though they were there to be central, be compact, to challenge us, to come at us. He was just dominant and physically could handle his space, move the ball on quickly, so there was no point really engaging for that. Like, what are you going to do with Declan Rice? He's bigger than you, he's faster, he's stronger, and he moves along the ball intelligently and smartly because he comes from a team where he was never going to get that much time in midfield. So it's one of those things where there's not too much to write about in one sense, and yet he just kept it all ticking, moving. Yeah, he was great. And he looked like, as you say, he absolutely enjoyed the experience of being the hub, and he was the reference, and the planet spun around him.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, because he's still, I mean, he's being given quite a complex tactical role, Tim. Like he after the match, he talked about how in the first game he was on the left side of a diamond. In this game, he played 6, but you heard him say like, but he lets me get forward a little more. I want to get forward. I want to do a little more of that. But if this is what I have to do, this is what I'll do. I mean, that stride into space and assist for Nketiah, that's a clever little play. You know, that's not something he would have been doing at West Ham particularly. We still haven't seen him really lash one yet. You know, that's coming. We know that'll happen. We get to see sort of the full range of what he can do. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Rewatching this, there was a moment like 40 minutes in, he was gassed. Absolutely gassed, Marty. He needed halftime badly. And so I think the amount of ground he has to cover and the way he has to play in our system is going to require his fitness levels to even go up. And look, he's a big body, right? Big, broad, physical player. I think, you know, there's a lot of weight on those feet, a lot of power having to go into those legs to move him around the pitch. I wonder if we're going to be able to see him be a 90-minute player. And it's funny, we've criticized Thomas Partey for not being a 90-minute player, and we've just thought of that as like a physicality and fitness thing. Maybe it's just the fact that if you play central midfield for Mikel Arteta, that role makes it very difficult to get through a game, you know, without your levels dropping. But aside from the fact that he looked a bit gassed, I mean, I just think this was the breakout game for him. How impressed were you with both sides of his game? What he did when we were dominating and what he did, I think, to be a really key part of keeping the game 1-0 at the end.
Yeah, hugely impressed. I thought he was the best player on the pitch. I thought this is the sort of game we bought him for. I thought he was really good against Forest, but we didn't buy Declan Rice, I don't think, to beat Nottingham Forest at home. We bought him to beat Crystal Palace 1-0 away and to be able to defend and be resolute when we're down to 10 men with 30 minutes to go. And Rice is one of those players. One of the things I really like about Declan Rice, I thought he played even better when we were down to 10. And I think there's something about Declan Rice. He's one of those players who the harder it gets, the more he likes it. And I've spoken to like Katie McCabe on the women's team. She's this type of player. It's just like the harder and the more challenging it gets, the more she shows up. And I think he's like that as well. And I can tell you from my kind of vantage point, he did not stop grinning during that second half. He loved it. And I know we had a bit of a joke about this on WhatsApp, but this was very like, this reminded me of, the Bane line from Batman. It was very much like, you think you can play sufferball. I was born in it, molded by it. This was like, out of the way, lads. This is West Ham football now. And I'm the best at playing West Ham football. And that's what I love about this signing. I really think he's just got both sides of the game. So he's doing that hybrid, like starting at the base, sliding across to the left. And when I did my article last week on Havertz, what I found really interesting was it was him pointing to Havertz. I know we'll come on to Havertz, and I'm not criticizing him in saying that, but it's like Rice was like, no, I know what's going on here. Like, I've come across here, you've got to move over there. Like, he's got it straight away, and he's such a fast learner. That's the other thing that always massively impressed me about him at West Ham. There was always it felt like every year there was a question about, well, can he do this? And then he just adds stuff to his game all of the time. And yeah, I thought we saw both sides of his game here, like the ability to drive the team forward, the awareness of when to be a 6 and when to be an 8. But then when we were down to 10 and we're defending with half an hour to go and the gloves need to come off, he takes the gloves off. And yeah, this belt, he gives me that feeling a little bit like when we signed Sol Campbell, and it was just like, yeah, I feel secure with you there. I feel safe, as it were.
It's great. And like, I think it's interesting that he was given more of the number 6 role today. I mean, it's a long, long way off, but come January, we won't have Thomas Partey at all. Declan Rice will have to play that role. And today, I think, talk about feeling secure and safe. You feel secure and safe that when that time comes, we're going to be just fine. We probably won't get to it much. Maybe we will. So I'll leave it a bit. But I was going to say, I think we also were reminded that it's a good thing that we have Jorginho in the squad, and we'll come on to that. I think what happens is when there's a player that's a favorite who doesn't start, every performance that's not elite leads to screams that favorite player should be starting. So for a while, it was Emil Smith-Rowe. Anytime, Martinelli didn't have a good game, so Smith-Rowe should start. And I think we moved past it just because people, I think, have seen that Smith-Rowe's not really ready to be starting at this level. Now that player is Trossard. So Gabriel Martinelli was our top scorer last season. We know he's going to be good. You just play him every game, he's going to come good. He was our man of the match against Forest 1 week ago, and you're seeing people be like, Martinelli wasn't very good. Trossard should start over him. Now, to be fair, maybe that is true. I mean, that's what competition is about. But same thing is going for Havertz, right? Havertz isn't good. Trossard should start over him. And Nketiah missed a chance. Trossard should start over him. And I get like, here's the great thing. Leandro Trossard is going to play a lot of football for us. I don't know if he's going to start a lot of Premier League games. He's going to start some Champions League games. He's going to start some Cup games. He's going to play 30 minutes in Premier League games. He's going to play when players aren't available. But the yin and the yang of new transfers is when a new transfer that's popular pops and has a good game early, he's the greatest player in history. When a new transfer who is a little bit divisive, or a little bit less favored, doesn't pop right away, he's the worst transfer ever. And really, obviously, neither of those things can be proven within 2 games of a season. What's interesting to me, Paul, is the analysis of Kai Havertz. And I'll say it like this. I do not think we've seen enough from Kai Havertz yet. I think there's more he can do and should do and will do. I also think Kai Havertz has stepped into a new system that's fairly complex, into a role that he wasn't playing at Chelsea, and has been a 7 out of 10 in all 3 games. He might have been better than that against City. I thought he was quite good against City, playing as a striker, to be fair. And then I think he's been a perfect 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 in these first 2 games, doing what he needs to do. Here's the irony of the Kai Havertz performance in this game, for example. Kai Havertz had the absolute, Granit Xhaka game. He passed at a high percentage. He kept the ball moving. He laid on one big chance that should have been taken, Martinelli in the 2nd minute. Because he does that so early in the game, I think it gets forgotten, but he did that. He had one shot from inside the box that actually, when he took it, I thought it was flying in. It just had that look about it. He won the most aerial duels. He defended well. And people were like, he's terrible. Now, look, I get it. We didn't spend all that money on him to just do that stuff. But if the baseline for me is, can you come in and do the Xhaka stuff? I want him to do more than that, but that's the baseline. You know what I'm saying? Like come in, do what Xhaka did so we don't lose anything. Let's start from there. Then layer onto that the extra stuff we know you can do in attack. And I'll just say one last thing before I turn this over to you, Paul, in typical fashion. The irony is when we went to sign Xhaka, do you remember what the criticism, Havertz, do you remember what the criticism was? It was, we're going to ship too many goals. When you lose Xhaka's defending and midfield presence will be too open. The irony is, Havertz has done a really nice job aping that role and making sure we're not too open. But now it's that he's not doing enough of the other stuff. So it's sort of a can't win in my mind. It's the idea that he's come in and done the Xhaka stuff, but that's not enough. Now, look, to be fair, I'm also reacting to straw men. What I mean by that is no one's saying Havertz. I mean, if you ignore social media for a minute, I don't think anyone's saying Havertz sucks. But I guess what I would ask you, Paul, is it fair to basically say Havertz has come in and give us a perfectly acceptable baseline, but it is also fair to say that we now need to see him start to impose himself in attack a bit more and layer onto that the qualities that we thought we were going to get from him, which is more of the around the box stuff.
Yeah. I think I insulted him on one of the IRs when I was giving him a stock falling I called him the invisible man. And And then a day later, I decided to cover my ass on that one by pointing out that if you ever watch The Invisible Man, he's in there solving crimes and all sorts of things because nobody can see him. Right.
So it was actually a compliment.
Yeah. He's very, very effective. And I actually kind of like that one. Like there'll be games where he pops. And in this one, he didn't pop. He was very Invisible Man in this. It's kind of that Raumdeuter thing of popping into space. Like he kept popping into where he was needed for the next pass on to keep us ticking along. I suspect Arteta loved what he did in terms of continuity play and keeping us ticking along. We have some partnerships still to work out on that side, but I don't think the problem was Havertz and Martinelli in that game. It was probably the fact that Tomiyasu is a decent left back defensively, doesn't add much attacking wise. When we get Zinchenko in that side, if we'd had Timber knocking around on that side, I think that level of play will come up a bit. And they're still working out what they do with Rice when Rice comes into that space to kind of push up because Partey's moved in and now he's in Havertz's area. And I think we saw in the last game in the second half against Forest, Havertz did what I think was a weird thing. They talked about the diamond shape, and Havertz became the tip of the diamond, but he was standing in basically in the space that Eddie would have dropped into. I didn't think much of the Forest second half in terms of that structure and how it worked. I mean, we were all saying, well, Eddie's not touching the ball. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but Havertz is standing in that spot and even he's not that busy. It just, for me, the second half against Forest, what we tried there was new and interesting. I guess we'll see it again because Deco talked about the diamond. So the diamond is a thing. But against Forest, it was Havertz actually who was the tip of the diamond. Yesterday, it was probably more like Eddie was dropping into that spot more often.
Yeah.
So I think they're working things out. I think what a manager likes and what we as fans like will be different at certain times till we understand maybe what comes from it. Invisible Man does all the things Arteta likes. What I'm particularly impressed by my concern was he's a guy who switches on when the other team loses the ball. That would be his contribution defensively. He'd work hard, all that kind of thing, but he wouldn't be switched on when we needed it defensively. That would be something he had to learn. Well, apparently he doesn't have to learn it because I think he's been great in the first two games, serious-minded, like Xhaka, senses danger. You'll see him dropping into the back line, into that spot over there to cover their triangles, attacking our box, always switched on, always kind of known where he needs to be. The one flaw I think he has is sometimes he's a bit cheap with the pass and turns it over. And I think he did that a little bit in the second half when we were under pressure. Maybe it was just the once, but you know how it is in those games. Once is like seven
once
times.
It just, puts you under. I mean, he completed 90% of his passes in this game. I mean, it's fine. Look, I would say this. When you look at the numbers, it's very clear what we're doing. And it's what we did last season as well, guys. Touches. Ben White, 76. Thomas Partey, 75. Bukayo Saka, 74. Now look at the left-hand side. Tomiyasu, 55. Martinelli, 43. Havertz, 41. We play to the right. We overload there. We overburden Odegaard and Saka. And we have free men on the far side. And when we switch it quickly, like Havertz does early in the second minute, you find Martinelli over, or the one where Martinelli had the volley, right? There were a couple of moments. Bukayo Saka made 9 crosses in this game. I watched all 9 of them. There's an open man on the far side ready to get the ball in a really dangerous position. Bukayo Saka had an off day crossing the ball. He didn't beat the first man. He hit the head of central defenders. I'm not saying crossing is easy. When Odegaard and Saka get that sort of Ozil top of the box cross down, you know, the in-swinger, he used to always pick out Alexis, right? With that in-swinger to the back post. Like, they're going to get that because they're too good not to. Saka did the thing where he cuts on his left and shoots, and I understand why he would do that. He scored brilliantly doing that last week, and he can score brilliantly doing that. But when he gets the feel for when to find that man on the far side with that in-swinging cross, we're going to be devastating. We're going to be even better than we are now. And I just think that's all part of learning each other because Havertz ghosts into the box a number of times really beautifully. Someone's got to find him. And I hate to do the thing of, oh, it's not his fault. His teammates let him down. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we overload the right-hand side. And so the left-hand side is more the off-the-ball flank, and maybe that will change. Look, when Zinchenko's on the pitch instead of Tomiyasu, I guarantee you there's going to be a little bit more access. And I will be much more willing to judge how Havertz, Tim, adds to our attack when Zinchenko's playing versus a Tomiyasu, right? The other thing is people say, well, but Xhaka wouldn't have that low a number of touches if he was still here. But
yeah,
we didn't have Rice and Partey together when Xhaka was here, right? Xhaka kind of had to do the midfieldy stuff too. So, or he had Zinchenko feeding him the ball. The left-hand side in this game did not have that access. So maybe it sounds like I'm making excuses, and I don't want to do that because, first of all, I don't think it needs to be excused. I think it's a cromulent performance. But I think there are going to be components of how we play where we'll get to see more of what Havertz can do in the final third. And I do think he has to do more of that. But what do you think, Tim? Am I giving him too easy a ride there? Or is it just the dynamics of how we play maybe influencing where the opportunities are at the moment?
Yeah, no, I make your assessment quite right, really. And you mentioned there with the crossing and all of that, when I went back and watched the Forest game again, every single time we had the ball wide right, Havertz is like second striker. He's either on the back post or the middle. Even if you look at Nketiah's goal, Scott highlighted this in a way that,
unfortunately,
for some reason, people found quite offensive for some reason. But he's always in that phase of play. He's a second striker, and he's going to score goals.
For a second too. In this game with the Nketiah chip, right? Nketiah has to shoot there. He's 1v1 with the keeper. But again, Havertz is coming in from the left channel, and he's standing at the penalty spot. So that second man run, that late run, that's a thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's going to score some goals doing that. I think also a lot of this comes down to perception as well. And I think that with Xhaka, when you break down what Xhaka was actually doing in that left 8 role, he wasn't taking a lot of touches. I remember writing about it last season, and I looked at the touch data. His touch data when he took up that position went way down. But because we had like 5 years of him being the high touch player, and we remembered all of that, I think we've muddled up what he was actually doing in that role, and we've muddled up all those memories of him being like at the base of the midfield for 5 years. He did a completely different role when he was playing in the left 8, and we've conflated those things a little bit. And I think also I think that basically when we put Xhaka left 8, we found his position. That was the position that suited him and that he should have been playing in all along. Playing at the base of the midfield did not suit him, but because he played there for so long, we think of him like that. And therefore, we see it as him adapting to the left 8 role, when I think we just found a better role for him that was more suited to him. So I think there's some perception stuff going on there. I think with Havertz, so I completely agree with your assessment. I think he's doing loads of, particularly off the ball, loads of really good things. I agree with you. When Zinchenko comes back into the team, I think we'll see a few more flourishes and touches. At the same time, I'm not going to pretend he's been any more than 6 or 7 out of 10. I doubt he thinks that himself. And I completely understand when you spend 65 million on a player, you don't want to squint to see it, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Like Timber, we saw it. Rice, we've seen it. You don't really want, for 65 million. You don't want, it's all the notes I wasn't playing, kind of thing.
I think if any of our attackers had been new signings yesterday, Havertz aside, and I mean Odegaard, I mean Saka, I mean Martinelli, I mean Nketiah, I think we'd be killing any of them. They were wasteful with chances. They were poor in big moments. But we know them and we love them, so we know they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what? And we're still figuring this guy out, and there are a lot of people that still see some Chelsea blue on him or maybe didn't want him, and that is fair. Look, I'm not suggesting, as you said, Tim, that this is as good as he needs to be. I just think it's a 7 out of 10, and and by the way, what he did, I think, in the end game when we're down to 10 men, moving to striker and holding it up a bit and working off the ball defensively, I think he showed character in that part of the game as well. That was important.
And technique. Like, you look at that did we have the ball for like 97 seconds or something? Technically very, very sound. He's not just a battering ram. It wasn't just the kind of the high ball or anything. It's the touches and the one touch and all of that, because he's a 10. That's kind of
Yeah.
what he is. He's
Yeah.
got that to his game. So I also think, perhaps going into slight excuse/caveat mode, we're asking him to do a lot of things at the moment. Like, he's a left 8 and then he's a 10 and then he's a second 9, and we're asking him to move based on where the ball is, and it's almost entirely off the ball. It's almost like wherever the ball like if the ball comes near you, go away. That's kind of what we're asking him to do. It's like Rice goes into the left 8, the ball goes over there, and it's Havertz, move over there, go and join Eddie. Like, we're asking him to do a lot of off the ball stuff, and that's what I mean about Xhaka as well. Xhaka doing that left 8, that was an off ball role. Like, his number of touches was down to around mid 50s per game. So that's largely what it is. But yeah, I thought he did a lot of things pretty well, very, very useful. And look, he's stayed on for both games. And I think also, when we talk more generally about our attack, we haven't seen Smith Rowe yet. We haven't seen Vieira yet. We haven't seen Gabriel Jesus yet. Trossard's had 15 minutes in one game. Like, there's a lot more to unlock, and there are a lot more partnerships that are gonna come on. But because we've led both games by a goal going into the closing stages, we haven't really unleashed those players yet. So I think there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, and I think it was Mikel who said it, actually. The manager's job is to get the players into the final third, right? With the tactics, and get the ball into the scoring areas. From there, the players have to do something. I mean, if you watch Manchester City, yeah, they have, juego de posición, and, they keep the ball and they progress it beautifully and their spacing's amazing. You know how they score most of their goals? Someone does something individual to pull a player out of position and then makes the right pass. Someone dribbles a man and a defender has to go over, and then they find the man that's in space. You know how many goals they score from cutbacks? It's unbelievable. And those cutbacks become available. Why? Because a wide player beats a man off the dribble and picks out the right pass. When they rewatch, or De Bruyne just some magical angle of passing. And ultimately, when they watch the video of this game again, Saka and Odegaard and Martinelli in particular, and certainly Nketiah on his finishes, are going to look at this and say, "Oh, we could have had hatfuls. We could have had hatfuls." So it'll come. Let's see. I think there will be games where it's better to judge. If you want to hear us complain about the referee, which we are more than willing to do, and praise the character of this team for how they played with 10 men, then you are first going to need to hear me tell you about NordVPN. Look, NordVPN is like the easiest of our sponsors to plug, because every single one of you listening at some point tries to watch something football related that you can't watch because it says it's not available in your region. It's like that simple. If you go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, you're going to get a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. You're going to get an exclusive deal on Nord, okay? And you will get, a huge discount off their plan and an additional month free, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, like, you just go to it, you can use it. But ultimately, there's a few things it's going to do. It's going to let you browse in a region you want to browse in. So if you want to watch Match of the Day, but you're not, in the UK, you can do it. If you want to watch, like Peacock, if you're an American, you're like, I can watch every game. This is great. But now I'm out of the country. I can't watch any game. This stinks. You can do it. You can browse from the area you want to browse in. You also do get protection because your browsing isn't being tracked, it isn't being followed, and all that stuff. So you can watch whatever adult videos you want without anybody judging. Not that we would judge you on this podcast here, because we don't do that. And of course, they also have all their threat protection. With threat protection, they say goodbye to intrusive web ads and malware even before you download infected files. So it's easy. Get the exclusive trial, 30-day money-back guarantee, an extra month additional free, huge discount off your plan when you go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, nordvpn.arsenalvision, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Let's say it again since I got it wrong that time. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Everybody all together, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. And of course, it wouldn't be an Arsenal Vision podcast if we didn't tell you that there's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform you need to build. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Look, to me, this is it is the most obvious thing. Honestly, I'm surprised someone didn't think of what Indeed did first, because instead of getting on every single different job site, spending hours on multiple sites looking for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools, and one of those tools is Instant Match. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed data. Now, the other thing is, You don't pay for what you don't get. Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. That says it all. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 job credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. And apply new Tim? Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Edit. Okay. Let's just get better and better, I feel. The sponsors may not feel, but I feel. They get better and better. Okay. So, a few things here. The fact that we've gone this far without talking about this shows you that we are either a podcast dedicated to intense and serious analysis, or we are incompetent. Tim, we had a new penalty taker. Mikel was asked about it, and he said, beats the shit out of me. Right? Basically said it's up to the players. It's the leadership group. It's their job. They decided. He had no idea. Saka had the ball. I got to say, I loved this because I think it showed self-awareness. Bukayo Saka, if you have a penalty specialist, I think having a taker is really smart. Like, he's your specialist. He's great at it. If you have Harry Kane, as much as it pains me to say it, you let Harry Kane take penalties. Like, that's it. If you have Jorginho on the pitch, I think you should let Jorginho take penalties. If you don't, I think the idea of picking the same middling penalty taker every time gives the keeper an advantage. He will have studied what you do. You don't put it in the corners. And if he picks a side, you're probably screwed. Bukayo Saka says, you know what, Martin, you haven't scored yet this season. Why don't you take a penalty? Keeper won't have studied for that. And sure enough, he rolls it into the corner. Your thoughts on Bukayo Saka handing the penalty over to Martin Odegaard for the goal?
Yeah, this is something we spoke about in the summer, and I said I'd like Odegaard to be our penalty taker. I do think, with all the respect and love in the world to Bukayo, I just think Odegaard's certainly the ones I've seen so far. He just seems to have a bit more of a knack for it. He seems to have a bit more of a knack for moving the goalkeeper. Whereas I feel like with Saka, they're not often that far in the corner, and I'm not. To be fair, the one he took in the Community Shield, he did move the goalkeeper, but I just think Odegaard's really got that down to a T. I think you're right. I think there was a bit of kidology there, certainly, because Saka took the ball. Whether he had a last-minute change of heart or whether it was just the surprise factor, we often see players do that thing, right, where they take the ball so that they take all of the shit housing from the opponent and then hand it over at the last minute. That's become quite a regular thing. Like the psychology, it's interesting. I was thinking about this earlier because I bought, for my daughter's birthday, I bought her a little goal for the garden, which means I bought myself a little goal for the garden. Because I think I've said this before, one of my favourite things in the world was taking penalties when I played. And just as a kind of relaxation thing, I love just smacking penalties into an open goal with no goalkeeper. And I was reflecting on this earlier about how like penalty taking has evolved and like the whole moving the goalkeeper thing, waiting for them to go and that stutter and everything and all of the psychology around taking the ball and moving it over. Like it's a game of wits, penalties. It really, really is. And that's why sometimes the guys you think will be really good at them aren't. And then, like you say, you get specialists. Like, there's no real reason that Jorginho should be amazing at penalties when you watch him play football. And there's no real reason that Bukayo Saka should be quite middling at them. But they are. That's just how it works. It's like it's a separate part of the game. It's It's
like the long drivers in golf. There's those long driving competitions. Most of those guys stink at golf, by professional standards, but they can do a thing that some other pros can't.
Yeah, or freestylers.
Yeah, good point. Exactly.
Freestylers, a lot of whom are probably quite average footballers, but they can do stuff, and penalties just like very, very separate type things. So I was pleased to see it. Where the poll was for me, I literally didn't see any of it because it obscured the penalty spot and the goal. So I just had to go off the crowd and the player reaction.
That's how I wish I could see all Arsenal penalties.
So it was very much like I'm reliant on everyone else here. But yeah, I kind of hope that that's a more permanent thing. But I'm with you. Like, if you haven't got like a a total specialist, yeah, why not? Why not? Like, just mix it up a little bit.
If you haven't had a chance to see Declan Rice's positioning during the penalty, check it out. He is literally in leapfrog position. It's very, very strange. He's down on all fours. It's like a really weird thing, but he's got a good view of it. All right, I guess we've come to the point of the pod that everybody's been waiting for. How many minutes can we chew up saying that David Coote was bad at refereeing, that the refereeing standards are bad? So, Paul, you know what I'll do? I'll light the touch paper here. I'll say something people will hate. I was mad at us for the time-wasting yellow. I felt that was bad by Arsenal. Now, a lot of people will say it was actually Havertz's fault more than Tomiyasu's. Tomiyasu takes an eternity over his throws. He was doing it earlier, but here's what happens. After we scored, Ramsdale takes 2 separate goal kicks where the crowd starts booing and calling attention to the ref, and the ref is kind of waving like, come on. Then we take a throw-in where the ref is like, come on, and it's a Tomiyasu throw-in. And then we have the one where Tommy gets the yellow. Now, it is a cumulative yellow for the time wasting we took taking that throw. By the letter of the rules, the letter of the law, the way the rules have been applied this season, you're going to get a yellow there. And I actually tweeted right after that yellow, that's so stupid. I don't want to be old man yells at cloud, but we know the rule. We know that's coming. We've taken that yellow for no good reason. Now, as we're going to point out, the second yellow is an absolute joke of the highest order. Ayew, on a yellow, drags down Bukayo Saka from behind in a rugby tackle and gets forgiven. Tomiyasu gets a second yellow for absolutely nothing. So I want to be clear that I am not blaming Tommy for that. But once you're on a yellow, you're one bad referee decision from being down to 10 men for nothing. So let's start with the time wasting thing. I think the way the rules have been changed doesn't make any sense because we have double jeopardy. We're adding all the time back now, and we're being more aggressive giving yellows for the time wasting. And there are going to be bad sendings off, and I think this was one of them. But for the time wasting component of the sendings off, do you see any blame belonging to the Arsenal players for just not being more situationally aware in that moment? Because I feel like we should know that they're looking to give those yellows.
Yeah. See, the problem is I agree with everything you said in your question. The referee should be, the referee should be able to give the yellow to Havertz for the throw-in. Not poor old Tomiyasu who hesitated for just an instance, and that was it. The referee was ready to give it. If we didn't immediately
8 seconds. So your decision whether you think 8 seconds is long or not. I watched it again. You know what he doesn't do? Sometimes football's about the pantomime. He doesn't look like he's trying to find a guy. He's just standing there with the ball over his head, stock still like a statue. And I just think that invites the yellow.
It's probably because he was actually busy trying to find a player to throw it to, rather than trying to look like he was busy throwing it to somebody. He knew he needed to get on with it, but Havertz set him up because Havertz we did this funky thing where somebody slowly flicked it to Havertz, and then Havertz had trouble getting control of the ball in his hands before he threw it in. I mean, they were just winding up. That was fucking stupid. And this is a long season, and that kind of professionalism of necessary versus unnecessary yellows, necessary versus unnecessary fouls. We just got to be super smart on this stuff. That wasn't clever. And the second yellow against Tommy was a travesty of justice from all the angles I've seen. There's nothing there. No reason Tommy should get sent off for a double yellow. As you say, a double standard on the double yellow for the other team. It was just bananas. It was stupid. It changed the game. It could have ruined the game. I have a bit of sympathy for the referees and not for the second yellow. I have no sympathy. That's just bad refereeing. Obviously, we'd got under his skin, but there are things we can control. We could have controlled that first yellow, that situation. We could have controlled not winding the referee up so much that he thought, right, well, here's natural justice. Here's your second yellow for bringing the guy down when he was free away from you. Take your medicine. We wound the referee up to a point. We didn't need to do that. We need to read the game. It was a bit of a cauldron. Their crowd were on our back. You got to read the room. We did not read the room. If this had been two other teams playing, Forget the fairness. I would have kind of seen this coming, and we should have seen this coming. We get to control certain things. We need to control them.
Yeah.
And we didn't need to do this to ourselves. Conversely, it gives, Mikel after this game said it was fecking brilliant, which I was surprised with. I didn't expect that phrase
as someone who also called it fecking brilliant. So you guys both love really, really nervy and anxious games of football, I see. Good for you.
Yeah, it's set up a classic 10-man. I thought we were going to be okay. I thought we were going to pull it off. I thought we might even get a goal on the counter. So that's how I felt about it. That's what, and this was one of those games, and the refereeing decision was part of it. I loved it, but we can control things, and not putting ourselves in that situation is what I came with. But yeah, I mean, terrible refereeing,
of course. But yeah, no one would disagree.
It's kind of the weird early thing where they're taking the exaggerated version of it, and then they jettison it after they screw us over, or they dial it back. But their screwing us over didn't quite work because we won.
It's great though, because we dodged the screw us over bullet, and now they will never referee games like this again. We're gonna have to stop saying if that was Xhaka, and now we'll say like if that was Tomiyasu or something. We'll just have to move on. It didn't help that I had Andros Townsend as one of the commentators for us for the match, because like I think he's former Palace player and former Spurs player, so not great. And then he was outraged that Palace didn't get the penalty. That wasn't a penalty.
Yeah, that was weird.
And basically said that that's why Arsenal got the points, ignoring entirely the fact that we had a man sent off for nothing. Tim, so I want to be clear that when I say I think we were naive and invited that first yellow, that I am not saying that was a fair yellow for Tommy to get, nor am I saying that he should have been sent off. Just that I was frustrated in that moment because I knew that Coote is not a good referee, and that when you pick up a cheap yellow, you put yourself in jeopardy. So that way, it frustrated me almost in the sense where it's like, if you're driving down the road and you know there's an erratic driver who looks dangerous, the last thing you do is like drag race him and stay near him and try to overtake him, right? What you do is, or her, you drop back or you go past, you keep distance. I just want us to stay out of Coote's range of damage, basically. And we didn't. I do want to make sure we spend a good chunk of the last bit of this pod on how we played down to 10 men. So let's get through this Coote thing. I guess what I would say is there's two things at play here. One is we now have VAR in so many aspects of the game. I know you hate it, but I think it's sort of silly in a way that given how much VAR has come into the game, that you can't VAR a second yellow that sends a man off. Because you said something that I really agreed with in your comments in the instant reaction, which is essentially sometimes the game that's being played warrants the call that's made in a way. But Arsenal having to play this game down to 10 men for what we did, which was essentially waste time and no contact. Like, there was no world where that was a judicious flow for the game, right? Like, it didn't make any sense. So do you think that the ref should have the scope to go to VAR? And I guess, to be fair, VAR probably wouldn't overturn it because that's how bad the referees are. What's your take on the, I guess, free swim? Your thoughts on the two yellows, the time-wasting one, the no VAR for the yellow? Like, the whole thing was shit. It was just shit.
Yeah, I think you should be able to VAR a second yellow. That seems like... I understand why you can't VAR a yellow card. That's fine. But when it's a second yellow, it's a game-changing incident. It's a game-changing call. So I don't really get that. Look, again, I can give you like my kind of emotional response in the stadium. The thing I'm really sick of with these edicts is they roll them out in exactly the same way every time, which is they go mega, 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 mega harsh. And then everyone says, what the hell are you doing? No one asked for this. And then they bin it all together. And it's stupid. They just don't see, like, we often use the phrase, don't we, on the podcast, that it's like pornography. You know it when you see it.
Yep.
These guys don't know it when they see it. There is a very distinct difference between slowing the game down a bit and time wasting.
Great point.
If you are an adult with critical faculties, you understand. I don't think people should be booked for slowing the game down a bit. That's not really what this is about, I think, for anyone.
And you're going to add the time anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like slowing the game down a bit when you're 1-0 up with like 20 odd, basically half an hour to go. Like that's not a bookable offence. What should be a bookable offence is like goalkeepers constantly taking over a minute to take goal, like flagrant, egregious time wasting. That is what should be. That is what people want punished. But instead, they do this ludicrous thing where it's like 8 seconds. No, 8 seconds too much. And to Arteta's point, like as a team, I agree with you. Look, Arsenal have to, whether we want to or not emotionally, Arsenal have to look at these incidents and say, okay, we need to manage these a bit better. But like Arteta said, like we don't know how to talk to the players about this because it's arbitrary. Like there isn't like a time limit on it or anything. And the referees or the PGMOL, I don't really know which, I don't really care because it all comes to the same result, just don't seem to be capable of being judicious and sensible about it. It's just like 1,000% jackhammer and everyone goes mad like I have and goes, what on earth are you doing? This is not what people wanted. And so they do away with it altogether. And so we're still going to get time wasting and like flagrant time wasting because they'll do away with this because it's nonsense and it's stupid. And do you know what this felt like to me? Maybe because I had a very similar vantage point. It felt like that Martinelli red card away at Wolves.
The two yellows in one play. Yep.
Yeah, because when Tomiyasu was sent up, like a red card should not shock a whole stadium. It shouldn't leave everyone going, "What he's walking what?" Like a red card should be like pornography. You should know it when you see it. Like you cannot change a game based on those two offences. I think the referee got emotional. I think he lost his head. I think he was wound up about, the potential time wasting or whatever. And he was like, right, I'm going to, and look, you're not supposed to do that as a referee. That's what being an elite referee is about controlling your emotions. This guy doesn't look like he can do that, whatever. But it just, I tell you something, just the best way I can express it, again, from being in the stadium, from having spent money on the ticket, on getting there, going to the game and all of that. And look, my team won, so I got what I wanted, but it ruined the game. It completely, it destroyed the last half an hour of the game. And that's not on. That is not on. Like, don't get me wrong, players have a responsibility to not get sent off. I'm less on the kind of referees shouldn't send players off. But for stuff like that, do not ruin the game for stuff like that. Don't do it. Like you're just ruining it for everyone.
And like at some level, Kai should have gotten the first yellow if anyone was going to get it, and Tomiyasu shouldn't have gotten a second yellow, period. So it's one of those situations where it's really harsh on Tomiyasu because he's not guilty of the first offense, nor is he guilty of the second offense. Paul, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think I disagree with Tim strongly on one point. I don't think it's like pornography at all. With pornography, like they got naked people doing things to each other they shouldn't be doing. It's like really obvious when something's pornography.
Stop.
Whereas this, no naked people, no people doing things that just shouldn't be done to other people apart from maybe the refereeing decision. I just think it's a terrible analogy. And after his diatribe on penalty taking and how it's a battle of wits, and then he tells us he knows this because he's been firing balls as hard as he can. A poor little Eva who's what age now, Tim? 3? 4?
3.
And that's how 3. And that's how you get your jollies and your theories on penalty taking. I think this has been a shocker from Tim today. I think he's had an absolute mare.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear because we've always said we don't kink shame on this podcast. I agree with you that pornography is naked people doing things. Where I disagree with you, I think they're doing things that should be done and should freely be done.
All right.
Whether or not they should be done on camera is another question, but they should be done. You should feel free to do them. By the way, if anybody's wondering where this whole pornography thing comes up and why it keeps coming up, just so that you don't think like we're trying to shoehorn that in, that is Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart in a obscenity case in the U.S. Supreme Court, where he said like pornography, because they were trying to decide what was obscenity and what wasn't. You talked about hardcore pornography being something that I know it when I see it was the threshold they came up with. So just a little U.S. Supreme Court jurisprudential history there for you at the tail end.
We've got everything on this pod. Everything.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not everything.
Your legal background's really coming in here, Elliot.
Yes. Yep.
Hey, where are you going later on this week?
Where am I going later this week?
Yeah.
To the U.S.
Going to
Supreme Court to
Vegas.
argue a case. Okay, there we go.
No, you're
Yes,
going to Vegas.
I'm going to Las Vegas. Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole picture forming here, Elliot. A whole
There's a
profile.
lot of things you know when you see in Vegas. Okay, let's do this. Let's move on swiftly.
Okay.
The final point I think we can make is looks bad refereeing. It's just that simple. It's bad refereeing. The standard of refereeing isn't good enough. We know that. The referees this summer had the opportunity to look at the standard of refereeing and say we're going to elevate it. And instead, what they said is we're going to punish the players for reacting to our bad refereeing more. And by the way, it could have been worse. Thomas Partey probably should have been shown a yellow for waving the fake yellow. Right? We got away with that. That's the thing about all of this. Even to our own detriment, I will just say there is no consistency, and it is an issue because there's going to be a game we play. I promise you it's going to happen soon where someone is going to take an eternity over a throw, and we're all going to be on here complaining, why didn't he get a second yellow and get sent off? So we'll see. Tim, playing with 10 men. So it's funny, right? In the wake of this game, I felt we showed tremendous character. I was swollen with pride. That's probably a bad turn of phrase in light of our prior discussion, but I was swelling with pride and I was feeling great about the team. I have to admit, in the moment, I was annoyed, at least for the first little bit. I just don't understand why being down to 10 men, we had to have none of the ball. So I thought Mikel's subs were brilliant. I thought maybe they were late. Like Zinchenko came on, Kivior came on for Saka and Odegaard. I thought Saka and Odegaard were just totally done. What I was hoping for earlier was like, let's get, so the Magalhaes for Martinelli sub right after the red card makes sense, right? You need to get a defender on. I would have gone like Trossard maybe, or Nelson even for Saka and Odegaard. So we have an out ball, just fresher legs. I just felt we were really sapped. We weren't able to get into them and get the ball back off them. Late in the game, we had that 90 seconds you mentioned or whatever where we kept the ball when Zinchenko was on and Jorginho was on. I thought he made a big difference on 79 minutes. So I'm torn because I feel so proud of how we defended down to 10 men. We really didn't give them too many free chances. But I also feel that the extent to which we struggled to get our foot on the ball, I don't think it should have been that one-sided down to 10 men. So I'm torn. Do you have a clear feeling of how we played during that period?
Well, again, I haven't watched it back, and I plan to watch it back tonight, so maybe I'll feel differently. And again, this might just have been my own anxiety in the period. I'm an anxious person, and anxiety breeds caution. So I was quite pleased to see that. But whether I was being rational when I thought that, and I thought we did it really well, I wonder if, I think Jorginho was a player I really wanted to come on in that moment because that's kind of how I think of him, as that like real shutdown player. Like that's the new Rob Holding coming on and playing a 5-4-1 as far as I'm concerned, and that's just a better way of managing it. But I just feel like we didn't give them anything. And the thing is about Palace, it might have been particular to Palace. Maybe I'm going too galaxy brain here, but Palace are a transition team. They want you to have the ball and then to nick it off you. And I do feel like maybe Arsenal felt if we deep block Palace, we're cutting their legs off here because they don't play like that. And it reminded me, I guess, a little bit of in the Women's World Cup, you had Nigeria, England recently, and Nigeria were bossing England because they were playing them on transition. Their whole, it was almost like martial arts, about using the strength of the opponent against them. And they were bossing the game. England got frustrated. Lauren James got sent off. And Nigeria didn't know how to cope with that because all of a sudden they became the team with the spare player, with the onus on them, and they couldn't deal with it. And I do wonder if maybe I'm overthinking this, but maybe they had a conversation and they were like, look, if we go down to 10 in this game, or if it's 1-0 with 10 minutes to go, deep block, because we know that Palace are far less likely to score that way. And if you come to a place where your focus is more on not conceding an equaliser than scoring a second goal, then maybe they talked about, then this is how we cut their legs off. We deep block, and they haven't got the players to pick through that. So maybe there was a bit of that to it, but ultimately I felt we did it really, really well, albeit we could have conceded a penalty in those last few minutes, and we'd probably be having a very different conversation if we had.
Paul?
Yeah, so I agree with your setup, Elliot. I much prefer the way we defended late on in the game than earlier on in the game. But I think we might get a little false read here in terms of the experiment, in that the first part of that game was just after, in terms of when we went down to 10 men, it was obviously just after we went down. We'd had the red card. We were down to 10 men. They were all fired up. They were all charged up. The crowd were behind them. They came at us like crazy, full of energy. They tried this for whatever that was, 15 minutes, trying to break us down. Couldn't, got frustrated. They were banging in crosses. They weren't quite coming off. They were attacking. Some of it was a little bit personnel dependent. We didn't have Jorginho on the pitch at that point. We didn't have Zinchenko on the pitch. But like, some things are just the force of the other team. They were always going to be much more aggressive, much more forceful. So my read was, then we bring on basically Xabi and Busquets and we defend the other way. And we watch that for 4 or 5 minutes and it's like, oh, this is great. We should have done this all along. I don't know that works, that we're that good yet to do that from the moment that we went down to 10 men. I think there was always going to be a period when they were going to be on their uppers. They were going to be coming at us. They were going to give us hell. And we were going to have to sit in and ride the storm. And then I think they were tired. It's the second game of the season. Hodgson talked about how when he saw our subs come on, he was kind of making the point that they don't have the bench we have. But he also made the point that they were knackered and we brought on great players. And I think that changed. It wasn't just we decided, well, we bring on ball players and we'll change our philosophy of defending. I think we changed because we could to some degree.
Yeah.
I would love to see us do that a lot more. That's not what I'm saying. I just think the next time this comes around, we say, well, why don't we do that thing right from the get-go? I don't think that's that easy. I think there's a period of the storm you got to ride out. I did like what we did once we brought on Zinchenko, Jorginho, and some other ball players.
Yeah, look, it would be, and Paul, maybe you can mute because I'm getting some echo on you for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, no, it's gone. Okay. Do I like the way we played with 10 men? I don't think I do, but we won and they didn't really create anything. So it's job done. I think you could be a little too analysis-y if you get what I'm saying. Like, playing with 10 men is a thing that you hope you don't have to do a lot and you just don't concede. Now, if we had to win the game, if it was still at 0-0, I think we would have played differently. And I think, to your point, Paul, maybe we looked at a team that we said, they're kind of toothless in attack. They're going to struggle to break down a low block. Let's not overextend ourselves. Do I think we could have used an out ball a bit more? Maybe. I do have to say, I think Jorginho was really good. I think Zinchenko just that 90 seconds there, Tim, where we were able to get our foot on the ball, what a difference that made. So, I loved that little period of it. Can I ask you something, Aaron Ramsdale? I just feel, and I've felt for a while now, that when the pressure ratchets up, Ramsdale goes long more. And I get it, get the ball away from your goal. We were trying to defend there. But I felt that there were at least 2 or 3 times I can think of right off the top of my head where, under limited pressure or no pressure, he booted it long to no one in particular. And I just do think that's been a feature of his game at times in pressurized situations. So am I just looking for something there? I think I will admit I'm more focused on it because of Raya's arrival, that if Raya wasn't there, I probably wouldn't even be thinking about it because I wouldn't be like, oh, he might lose his job to Turner. But is there anything in that, or you think that's just my own biases showing?
It's something Ramsdale's certainly going to have to work on. For me, it's not the fact that he goes long. Like, clearly Arteta wants us to go long quite often from the back. Not every time, but to mix it up. Like, he bought Ramsdale when he had the most long clearances in the Premier League. And that, I remember we had the discussion at the time. You don't do that by accident. And he's just bought Kai Havertz. And every time Ramsdale has the ball at his feet, Kai Havertz goes up front. Even when Eddie's there, Eddie swaps. And it's more about getting onto the knockdown. So there is a very, very, direct kind of tenet to all of this. And our centre-backs as well, like Ben White, he can smash a ball cross-field. Like, there's a lot of that where I think he's asked to do that. For me, it's more the kind of that it didn't reach anyone, not the fact that he's gone long, the fact that he didn't go long accurately. And clearly that's something that David Raya is really, really good at, albeit, in fairness, I think we can contextual. At the moment, we have to contextualize the fact that Raya was going long to Ivan Toney, and you probably don't have to be as accurate going long to Ivan Toney because and in fact, the way Brentford play, they play with two front players. They have Mbeumo as well, and it means they go over the top either way, either like to get Toney to chest trap it or to get Mbeumo in behind. So, it's something he's going to have to work on clearly, because we've got an absolute specialist at exactly that type of ball waiting in the wings. And so I don't think there'll be an issue with Arteta with him going long. It's more with him going long more accurately. That's the point.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, I think going any bigger on that than I've just gone would be inappropriate under the circumstances. I mean, he didn't have much to do in this game. He just wasn't really a big part of it, so I don't think it's a big talking point. Paul, there's a couple things, maybe last little things. One thing is just Gabriel. Gabriel came on, and he really wore his heart on his sleeve, as he does. He was furious at what I think he felt was a dive for their penalty shot, which he didn't get. And by the way, what we elided in our Coot conversation, I will just make the point there were 4 penalty shouts in this game. 2 for us, 2 for them. He gave us 1 and gave them none. So there is that. Because I will tell you, if he gives the penalty, VAR is not overturning that. Let's be clear. So I think we owe him a bit of thanks. I don't think it's a penalty in a million years, but if he gives it, it's staying. We just know that's how that works. So for Gabriel, I mean, any thoughts on, did you get the sense Gabriel was maybe trying extra hard to show he's one of the group, or that's just who he is? Like, he looked like Gabriel to me. He looked absolutely fired up, completely switched on. He had, a couple of good defensive involvements where his teammates really patted him on the back, and the celebrations at full time from everybody were full-throated. Gabriel, though, really, really gave it big with his celebration. I mean, do you think there's any little bit in the back of his mind of like, I'm going to show I'm still, I'm fully invested? Like, what do you think about that? Or is that just, doing the whole narrative thing?
Look, he's a young guy. It's got to be a very emotional situation.
Can you get your mic just slightly closer to you? You changed your mic position a little bit, and it just, okay. There you go.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
No, you were fine.
I was fine.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yep, perfect.
Do you like that?
I do like that, yeah.
Yeah, so the thing about pornography is they got the naked...
I do have to say, I do love the idea of being 90 minutes into a podcast, and that's when you're like, I'm going to move the mic to a new position. Like, we're almost at full time. Don't take off the defenders now.
I'm nervous.
Okay.
Something made me nervous. I can imagine he's kind of pretty emotional. It's a very difficult... I do think he's very committed and wedded to this group, this squad. I don't know what's going on in the background. I guess there must be something in terms of the transfer thing. He's talked passionately about being at Arsenal, being this club, this being the club for him for the future. It's a bit confusing on that front, that there's these stories that haven't been completely stamped out. I mean, it'd be easy to stamp out. He could say, I'm absolutely not going anywhere. This is a load of bollocks. I don't know what anybody's talking about. That doesn't seem to have happened. So he's probably in a fairly emotional state. And yeah, this is a fairly emotional situation. You're under a lot of pressure. You have to come on. You're kind of come save us, right? It's not just he came on and he had an important job. It was the job, the second centre back. The guy was going to have to cut out all the crosses, make all the hero tackles, all that kind of thing. Now, was that exactly how it played? You don't know when you're coming on. That's mentally where you got to be. It's probably a very emotionally charged up moment for him, but he's obviously committed to the group, to the camaraderie of the esprit de corps, his partnership with Saliba. He's not going to want to let himself down. He's not going to want to be the guy who let the team down when he came on. Yeah, I'd say he's charged up. Yeah. I think it's odd that he hasn't made a statement at this stage to say, what a load of bollocks, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, he's met with the representatives of the Saudi Arabian team, if that's to be believed. So, like, he can't really say that yet. But let me say this. There's one final point I want to make, Tim, and I'm going to go full narrative here, but I think this is important. I was mad at us a little bit in the Forest game for what I said was kind of reading our own headlines. I thought we were very casual in the second half of that game. Like, oh, we're title challengers. We're one of the best teams. We're at home to Forest. They can't hurt us. And they did. And they made that nervy for us, nervier than it needed to be anyway. This game, I think, could stand us in good stead in one regards. This was a wake-up call. It was a slap in the face. We had to fight. We had to scratch. We had to claw away 10 men, all hands to the pump defending. A reminder that, oh yeah, the Premier League is relentless. You don't get handed a title. Just because you're not playing City or United or Chelsea doesn't mean teams can't hurt you. And much like we sleptwalked through the second half against Forest, we really fought and scraped and earned our victory at Palace. And I think the galvanizing impact of that, being up for the battle so early in the season, being tested in this way, having to really show character, maybe that's something that this team needed a bit, because last season we were the underdogs. No one believed in us. We had that. This season, it's more of we know we're good. We know we're going to compete. And you need that arrogance, but you still got to bust your ass every game to earn the right to be arrogant. And I think the Forest game had a bit of complacency to it. Do you think this can serve as just a bit of that reminder of, wow, yeah, the tension and anxiety and intensity of this league is top. And we have to be top every time we kick off,
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly it was the Monday night game as well. So all eyes were on you on the Monday night game, particularly, Manchester City played over the weekend, swatted aside Newcastle relatively comfortably. So no kind of, no let up there. So yeah, absolutely. And look, they're very different types of game, like Nottingham Forest at home and Crystal Palace away. Very, very, very different game. Like Forest at home, they say there aren't any easy games in the Premier League, and that's almost true. But based on last season, Forest at home is your easy game. And look, some of that I do think was also down to it just being a bit early in the season. And at the moment, teams kind of play for 75 to 80 minutes. So, maybe you can let that slide a bit there. But I agree with you. I think we sleptwalked through that second half. And you heard what Arteta said. It's about scoring more goals. If Clive were here, I'm sure he'd say, don't play a 3-0 game when you're 1-0 up. Play 3-0 game when you're 3-0 up. And, we've been pegged back away at Liverpool, away at West Ham, and all of that in recent months. So, yeah, like to hold on to this, I think that can definitely give them something. And particularly, I think Declan Rice having a big part in that. I think that can really make him feel like part of the group as well. I think that will be really important.
Yeah, well said. All right, well, I think we should probably leave it there, is my take. I think that's a good 90 minutes on a game that was anxious, fun at times, not fun at other times. Saw a breakout performance from Declan Rice. A lot of good stuff in that. We play the worst defense in the league through 2 weeks on Saturday at home. I think it's an opportunity to maybe get that goal scoring thing right. And it might be an opportunity to maybe be a little sharper in our judgment of our attacking players, because I think there will be an expectation and a need for them to be on top of their game in that one, because then after that it's United. So it's a chance to really get firing. But the other thing I'll say, having to defend a bit against Palace, United are going to be good counterattackers. That's what they're going to do. It's going to be a different kind of test. Maybe having to had defend a bit and work on that side of the game a bit will be a helpful thing for us. I don't know. Lots of ways to think about it. We'll have a rewatch tomorrow, plus some Premier League summary stuff. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Tim's on Twitter. Stominator. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Hope everyone's doing well. We got through that. More to get through together. We love you. We will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Fulham 0.